highest possible self.
Hey guys, it's Julian today. I'm in the process of rearranging my studio, so the background's a bit empty, but I'm going to be talking to you about how to make a full solid grooves raw and repopulate Mars style of minimal tech house track. I've talked a lot about the style on this channel, but today I'm going to be bringing down some new things, how to make it sound a little bit cleaner than I've gotten it in the past, and also just talking about this more stripped back style. Like, this style is really open, there's going to be tons of space, and I'm going to show you how to achieve that while still making an interesting track. As usual, you can get the full project file, MIDI, presets, everything from this video, as well as you can hear the full track. And the link at the top of the description on my Bandcamp, it's right there. And yeah, let's get started. Alright, so here's the project. And right off the bat, you can see, like I said in the beginning, very simple. You'll notice this is mostly, really like the main things that happen throughout this track are just going to be the percussion, the hi-hats, and then the kick and bass, the low end. And then there's also like the sample loop, one synth, a little vocal sample, and really the rest of this is just going to be effects. And that's something that you want to keep in mind right off the bat. The idea here is that we have a simple idea, but the idea is so good that you don't need all this other stuff. You know, it's like, if you have like a kind of boring bass line and boring percussion, then yeah, of course you're going to have like a bunch of crazy synths happening on top of it because, you know, you need something to be exciting. But if those things are already exciting enough, then you don't need the extra synths and stuff like that. And that's the idea with this, is that we're exploring like how can we make it interesting, and so interesting to where a simple idea is all you need and you don't need all that extra stuff. And really what that's going to come with is like how these main elements are grooving together. If you listen, yeah, you can hear it's all kind of like creating one groove. So that's really the thing, you know? Instead of just having like a simple bass line and some simple percussion to try and then make a lot of room to add other synths on top, again, we're kind of creating all this stuff to speak to each other, and that's creating the groove that's going to be so interesting that you're not going to need extra stuff over the course of the track. So I'll break down the individual elements. The first thing is going to be the bass line, which is 2 layers. So we have this sliding bass, which is just operator, you can see, so it's just playing just from A to E, it's doing that slide. And then it's just 2 sine waves, so it's really just one sine wave with a little bit of extra harmonic content from the second one. You can see we have the voices on one, and then there's the glide, and that's being sidechained to the kick. And so you kind of have the call and response between this and then the bass stab. You go, kind of like that. And again, this is another way that you can make things a lot more exciting with this really simple groove. Really, like, this bass stab is just one note. You can see with that tuner, it's in the same key as the operator bass, but that's all it is. It's just like a really percussive bass. So that on its own might be kind of boring, but then if you add that with this other thing, all of a sudden there's so much groove there. And it's really like not even too far out of just like the lower, like low end frequencies, and that's all happening. And then the kick, which is just like this fat kick, you know, very 909-esque. You can hear that it's just playing in there. There's no processing on it, but again, you don't really need it because it's already leveled out in a way. It's louder than the kick or than the 2 basses, so it's gonna just sit right in the mix. So you don't always need that extra saturation on the kick. You know, a lot of times you can get that or get the right level just by having it be louder than the basses. But then still blending them so that the basses have a lot of power to them. And then on the groove of the low end, we have a very tiny amount of saturation. Here's without it. And then with it, which just glues it all together a little bit. And then we also have this high pass filter, which comes on. So you can see pretty much like throughout the track, it's coming on and off. And this is another way that we can add excitement to this very simple track, you know, just having like having a high pass like that and then doing like little fills. You know, it adds a lot of cute little moments to the track so that, again, you have this really simple track, but there's something memorable about it and there's something a little bit more interesting to it. And then this also filters up here, so it's kind of a nice way to make this disappear because there's like this break happening. So you just kind of hear it slowly disappear. And then it perfectly blends into this spot. Then we have our hi-hats. See, look here, these are just pretty straightforward. Like we have this one playing on top of this like shaker kind of hi-hat. So it kind of goes back to what I was doing with the bass lines. You know, it's like we could just have, but then adding that other one in there that's bouncing off of it. As you can hear, it's adding a lot. So again, it's like a really great way to have a really simple hi-hat section. It's only these two hi-hats, but there's so much groove happening there. And then we have this one, which is 2 layers. So we have this sort of like our main like mid-range hi-hat, and then this one on top adding that nice like harder kind of sizzly thing. And I've also boosted the highs on that. And yeah, it gives you the best of both because you get that really full punchy mid-range, but also the really punchy high-end. And then on the group of those, you'll see there's no processing. So again, like if you just have really good sounds and they're leveled out right, you really don't need any processing on them. Like it can work fine like this. Especially with hi-hats where like, you know, the hi-hats already have so much texture to them and so much going on. And especially like if you already have done the work to like layer the samples together and find really good quality samples, you're not really going to need so much extra stuff. Like, it's already there. We just need to get it leveled out in the track. Then we have the percussion, which starts with these two. So you can hear these are kind of like the background percussions. I'm treating these kind of like they're on loop. Like this one just constantly goes, and then this one's playing underneath it. And you can hear the groove that those add, just having that like. If I turn them off, yeah, the track feels a lot more flat. So these are a really great way to just have something you can bring in. Like we have the whole intro here without them, and it sounds fine. But there's a lot more groove, and you'll also notice that this kind of quieter percussion grooves really well with the bass line. So, you know, it's keeping that in mind as well. Like, every element is made with the overall groove in mind. And it also goes to show you, like, you know, if you just have good programming and you have good sounds, it's like, I'm not concerned with, like, putting the perfect amount of tiny room reverb and, like, compression on this percussion, because it's like, dude, we don't need that, because it just sounds good in the track. Like, it just works well based on what sound it is and exactly where it's hitting in the groove. So you're not going to be then, you know, stressing about, oh, am I putting the perfect amount of EQ and compression on this? It's like, no, because you're not really even going to be worried about that, because it just sounds good by nature of what it is. And then we have the clap and snare, which are layered together. So like a nice kind of cracky clap. And then this very punchy snare. It's almost like a hip-hop snare. Like more like a boom bap hip-hop snare, not necessarily a trap snare. But you can hear that just fills in like the bottom end of the clap. And then on the group of percussion, you can see that we do have a little bit of drum bus. So here's without it. And then with it. So this can be useful. Like, this is a case of using it kind of more sparingly, where it can make things kind of just fit together a lot better. You know, it gives these a very even texture. It makes them a bit punchier. But it's not going to contribute that much to like making the whole track feel too saturated. Like, if you do drum bus on everything, the whole track is going to feel way too saturated and it's going to be a mess. This is not really going to contribute too much to that. But we can still get that nice saturation on the percussion like that. Then the next thing that we have here is the sample loop. Which my hard drive is being annoying right now. But yeah, you've heard that in the track. So what this is actually one of my sample loops. It's from this old sample pack that I made called House Music Volume 2, I want to say. Shout out to the OG fans who picked that up when it first dropped. I made it literally in like 2018. But essentially what this is it's just this cool, like, kind of, you know, very interesting textured sort of sample loop. And it's something that you can bring in here because you don't necessarily want to just make like a synth melody. You know, it's not like I'm making like a big techno track where I'm going to have like a synth motif and then like a respace underneath it and a pad. You really just want something that's going to be musical that is just going to add some like texture and character to your track. So samples are really good for this. And you can sample disco records, you can sample funk records, you can sample a lot of like classic stuff. You can also use sample pack loops, but I like using stuff like this. I mean, this is something that I made, and it just has like a very unique vibe to it too. Like, it's not gonna sound too much like an old disco sample to where it's super recognizable. It's also not gonna sound too much like a synth. You know, it's just something a little bit more creative. I'll put the link to that House Music Volume 2 sample pack in the description if you want to grab. There's a bunch of these in there, but yeah, I have it, and it's just, you know, in there playing through the break, and then it kind of drops down. You can see the volume is like constantly, you know, building and falling. So it's very dynamic, even though it's a repetitive loop. As you can see, you know, there's some automation pretty much constantly happening with that volume. And there's also like this over here. I've taken it and just made those little chops with it there, with like this little echo automating. So it's a very dynamic sound. You can also see, so for processing, yeah, we have a high pass filter. There's the utility, which is bringing it in and out. There's that echo, which comes in some of those parts. A bit of drum bus to make it a bit fatter and more textured. Another high pass filter. And then it's just being sidechained to the kick. So that's all you really need. Again, like, just a cool sample loop like that. Or maybe like a loop from an old disco track. Anything like that. But you don't want to go too crazy with the synths. Again, it's going to be a lot more kind of like playing with audio and just getting creative like with that. Then we have this lead, which just kind of adds this high note on top of the sample loop. If you hear it, it vibes very well with that. You know, like, I'm pretty sure it's playing, it's either the 4th or the 5th of that, so you get this very kind of like jazzy thing happening there. And all this is it's just 3 sine waves in operator. The note that it's playing is C sharp. And then, yeah, it's just creating this, it's really like sine waves that through the FM kind of create a saw wave. But it has like a little bit more of an interesting texture to it. So that's why I like using this, because you can create these somewhat familiar sounds, but it has a lot more interesting and creative texture going on there. And yeah, and then I just have a bit of chorus. I have this utility, which is bringing it in and out in the same places as the sample loop is. And then it's just being sidechained to the kick. And that's it for the lead. And then we move down to this vocal sample here. So the vocal sample,
the way that it has to for us to become our highest possible self.
So this is vocal sample. I've taken it and I've pitched it down. And we're using, so it's pitched down quite a bit. And it's on the complex pro setting. So you're getting that kind of like warpy formant shift sort of
the way that it has to for us.
Pitch down versus like if we put it on complex.
The way that it has to for us.
Yeah, then it sounds like Darth Vader. Like, you can't really tell what they're saying. But it's just a good way to give it a more interesting texture, kind of obscure it a little bit. I've got it going through a bit of echo, just doing quarter notes, as well as some drum bus, and then a high pass filter. So it's just kind of making it sound a little bit fatter.
I really believe that everything happens
a little bit spacier. You can hear that in the track.
Everything is unfolding the way that it has to.
And then you get
the way
this big
that it
open
has
moment.
to for us to become our highest possible self.
And then it drops really nicely. So, like, that's another arrangement thing, too. Because obviously, the processing is pretty simple with this one. But it's really about, like, creating that moment where, like, okay, these are going to just completely drop down. The volume is disappearing.
Everything is a has to for us.
And you get
to
just the
become our
vocal
highest.
sample. Then it stops. There's that little effect. And then we get everything again. And this is, like, how you can really make a powerful moment in your track with a vocal sample. It's not just about finding a cool vocal sample. It's about really understanding, like, we're going to just make everything disappear, have a really cool moment here between this vocal sample and something cool happening with the effects, and then give them everything again. Then after that, we have all the effects down here. So like I said, these are, going to be pretty straightforward. I mean, we've got everything from, like, the snare. So, like, just a bunch of different effects. These are all from my definitive track effects pack. It's just a lot of stuff to kind of fill the track out. What I really want you to see is just how much stuff is going to go into making, like, a full professional track. Like, this is where you have to have everything, And, like, it's not just about having, like, a big sweep going into the drop and having a big crash. It's about, like, really knowing how to make this stuff happen because, and of course, it's easy to grab samples from a sample pack. What's hard is to really, like, know the right moment where to drop everything. So, like, okay, for example, why are we going to make, like, all these effects here? Well, it's because you've been hearing the same thing over and over. It's going to be kind of boring. So we need to have something new happen here so we can have new effects happen. Or, like, why are we going to put that there? Or, like, that there. Like, all that kind of stuff. Again, it's just understanding, like, really listening to the track, just hitting play once you have your, like, main groove set out, and saying, like, okay, we need an effect right here. Like, right at this moment, I'm starting to get bored. So that's where you would go and drop in a little effect sample or, like, a little something like that. It's really just, like, listening and not just putting things every 8 bars or every 16 bars, but listening for the moments where, like, you're starting to get bored and you feel like you need something to kind of spruce the arrangement up. There's also some cool stuff happening down here, like where we have these two kind of playing with each other. It's just the hi-hat too from up top, but I've reversed it and done this little, like, so you get those kind of playing off of each other. There's also, like, this effect for this moment. So it's another one of my effects. It's this big sweep. And then I'm just putting it through a grain delay. And then this auto pan. And the auto pan just, like, the amount is coming up there. So you get that, like, nice kind of, like,
possible self.
it's all over the place. And then it gets super tight. And then it drops. It's just kind of a nice way to make it a little bit more exciting. Especially when you have that moment where everything has disappeared. Just to kind of, like, again, turn that from, like, what would be kind of boring, where everything drops, into a very full moment. Because you have this exciting effect happening that happens nowhere else in the track. Then there's just, like, this. A little... And there's also the zap. Which all it is, it's just a saw wave going into a pitch envelope and operator here. And then, essentially, like, how you set these controls, like, if you just take this and start moving it around, that's what's going to create the sound. And then also they're going through a bit of chorus. So yeah, this is kind of like pretty simple sound to make there with the operator, but with the pitch envelope, it's really easy to make.
Everything is unfolding the way that it has to.
And yeah, so that is going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video. This whole track arrangement is available right at the top of the description on my Bandcamp. So definitely go check that. This is a really great way to support me. If you guys are enjoying these videos, I don't make a whole lot just off of YouTube, but with these templates and different things like this, I'm able to keep going and keep bringing you guys new videos every single day. And yeah, thank you so much everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.